Shalom, Israel. This is Bishop Nathaniel. The Israelites have been scattered across the four corners of the earth, as prophesied in Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter. Here in Israel United in Christ, we need your help to recover the remnant of our people, teach them the gospel. Please help us, support us, and join or donate to the Booster Club today. Shalom.
Shalom, Captain OC.
Shalom, Officer Aaron.
Today, 15 minutes with the captains. Today, we're going to go into a very, very heavily debated topic. Today, we're going to go into circumcision. Today's class is titled, Circumcision is Nothing. So let's get the understanding on that. Let's start off on where the confusion stems from. Let's go to 1 Corinthians chapter 7 and verse 17.
The book of 1 Corinthians, chapter 7 and verse 17. But as God have distributed to every man, as the Lord have called every one, so let him walk, and so ordain I in all churches.
So Paul was saying, as Christ and the Most High have called all these different men from different walks of life into the knowledge of Christ, let them walk in the office that they came into this truth. Let them continue in that office. Keep reading. Verse 18.
Verse 18. Is any man called being circumcised?
If you called into the knowledge of Christ being circumcised, read.
Let him not become uncircumcised.
Don't become uncircumcised. What does that mean? Can you even do that? Read.
Is any called in uncircumcision? Let him not be circumcised.
If any man being called in uncircumcision, let him not be circumcised. Interesting. Read.
Circumcision is nothing.
Circumcision is nothing.
And uncircumcision is nothing.
Uncircumcision is nothing.
But the keeping of the commandments of God. Let every man abide in the same calling wherein he was called.
So, we're not going to break it down just yet, but I just wanted to show you where this comes from. So, he says something very early. He says, is any man being called circumcised, let him not become uncircumcised. So, let's just clear the confusion. Is it a law to get circumcised? Let's see. Leviticus chapter 12 in verse 2 and 3. And he said, circumcision is nothing, uncircumcision is nothing, but the keeping of the commandments of God. Let's get the commandment of God. Read that.
The book of Leviticus chapter 12 and verse 2. Speak unto the children of Israel,
read,
saying, if a woman have conceived seed, and born a man child, then she shall be unclean 7 days. According to the days of separation, for her infirmity shall she be unclean.
Read.
And in the 8th day.
And in the 8th day.
The flesh of his foreskin shall be circumcised.
The flesh of his foreskin shall be circumcised on the 8th day. Now he said keeping the commandments was the only thing that mattered.
Right.
Now that's a commandment. Now let's get Christ. Let's see. Did Jesus Christ, the Messiah, the man who abolished all commandments apparently, let's see, did he keep the laws? Let's get that. Luke chapter 2 and verse 21. Did he get circumcised?
The book of Luke chapter 2 and verse 21. And when 8 days were accomplished for the circumcising of the child.
For the circumcising of the child. After 8 days, read.
His name was called Jesus.
His name what?
Was called Jesus.
So Christ was circumcised on the 8th day. In 1 Peter it says he was the perfect example. Keep reading though, keep reading.
His name was called Jesus, which was so named of an angel before he was conceived in the womb.
Keep reading.
And when the days of her purification, according to the law of Moses, were accomplished, they brought him to Jerusalem to present him to the Lord.
So he got circumcised. Then it goes into the part of circumcision that goes into the manner of Moses. Keep that in mind. Now let's go to the book of Philippians chapter 3. Philippians chapter 3 and verse 3.
The book of Philippians chapter 3 and verse 3. For we are the circumcision which worship God in the spirit, and rejoice in Christ Jesus, and have no confidence in the flesh.
So now we're going to Paul. Paul said he has no confidence in the flesh. What was he speaking about? We're going to give you the understanding. He was speaking about the law of sacrifice. All right, read.
Though I might also have confidence in the flesh, if any other man thinketh that he have whereof he might trust in the flesh.
Meaning trust in circumcision, not on Christ. I mean, law of sacrifice and not on Christ. Read.
I more. Circumcised the 8th day.
What was Paul?
Circumcised the 8th day.
Paul was circumcised the 8th day. Read.
Of the stock of Israel. Of the tribe of Benjamin. And Hebrew of the Hebrews. As touching the law, a Pharisee.
So, what are we reading? We're reading the examples of our forefathers keeping the law of circumcision. Now, let's see. Did that law go away when Christ came? Let's go to the book of Matthew chapter 5 and verse 17. And remember, as we go through, we didn't read it yet, but the things that Paul written, they said they are hard to be understood if you don't keep the commandments. But we're going to try to clarify for you today. Read that.
The book of Matthew chapter 5 and verse 17. Think not that I am come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill. For verily I say unto you, till heaven and earth pass, one jot or one tittle shall in no wise pass from the law.
Till what?
Till all be fulfilled.
Till everything is fulfilled, the laws of God still stand. We just read Leviticus 12 and 3. That circumcision is a law that is to be kept. So why would Paul say circumcision is nothing? Why would he say that? Why would Paul say circumcision is nothing? And why would he say don't have confidence in the flesh? Let's see what he meant by that. Let's go to the book of Acts chapter 15 and verse 1. Now we're going to give you the understanding on what was the confusion throughout all of the New Testament and all of the churches during the time of Paul and the disciples. Why were they so hung up on the word circumcision or uncircumcision? Let's get it.
The book of Acts, chapter 15 and verse 1. And certain men which came down from Judea taught the brethren.
They did what?
Taught the brethren.
Read.
And said, except ye be circumcised.
Except you be circumcised. Read.
After the manner of Moses, ye cannot be saved.
So, this is what it's going into. When it says, except you be circumcised after the manner of Moses, it's talking about you being circumcised and then falling back into what? The law of sacrifice. Over and over again, you'll read it. Let's get it again. Let's go to verse 5.
Verse 5. But there rose up certain of the sect of the Pharisees, which believed, saying that it was needful to circumcise them, and to command them to keep the law of Moses.
Read that part again. It was needful to what?
Circumcise them.
It was needful to circumcise them. And notice they put it in separate things. Because you could get circumcised and believe on Christ, or you can get circumcised and do what?
And command them to keep the law of Moses.
And to command them to keep the law of Moses. Mean what? Now you're going back into the sacrificial part of the law. Let's get some more understanding though. So, circumcised mean what? You're following the law of Moses, meaning what? You're following the law of sacrifice. Now let's get what it means when it says uncircumcised. Let's go to Ephesians chapter 2 and verse 11. Because he said circumcision is nothing, uncircumcision is nothing, but the keeping of the commandments. Read that.
The book of Ephesians chapter 2 and verse 11. Wherefore, remember that ye being in time past Gentiles.
Being what?
In time past Gentiles in the flesh.
You were once a Gentile in the flesh. Read.
Who are called uncircumcision by that which is called the circumcision in the flesh.
What does that mean? Let's go to the book of 1 Maccabees chapter 1 and verse 11. They were called uncircumcision. Some of them were literally uncircumcised. Some of them may have been circumcised, but what were they doing? They were living in a manner of a Gentile, which was what? Being uncircumcised. Because if you were circumcised, guess what? You were going to keep the commandments. All right, read that.
The book of 1 Maccabees chapter 1 and verse 11. In those days went there out of Israel wicked men.
Read.
Who persuaded many, saying, let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us.
Read.
For since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow. So this device pleased them well.
So there were Israelites that made a covenant with the other nations. All right, read.
Then certain of the people were so forward herein that they went to the king, who gave them license to do after the ordinances of the heathen. Whereupon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem, according to the customs of the heathen.
That's the key part. Read.
And made themselves uncircumcised.
And did what?
Made themselves uncircumcised.
Now, once you are circumcised, you think about this. Can you make yourself uncircumcised? Can you put the foreskin back onto your penis? You can't do that. What is it talking about? It's talking about a mindset. That's why it says circumcision is nothing, uncircumcision is nothing, but the keeping of the commandments. Meaning no matter how you came into the knowledge of Christ, that doesn't matter anymore. The only thing that matters is that you believe on Christ, whether you're sacrificing or not. But I'm going to give it further examples. Let's go to the book of Galatians, chapter 5 and verse 1. Let's get some more understanding on what this is talking about.
The book of Galatians, chapter 5 and verse 1. Stand fast, therefore, in the liberty wherewith Christ hath made us free.
Read.
And be not entangled again with the yoke of bondage.
Now, I just want to clarify. Paul's office was to the uncircumcised, which was what? To the Gentiles. So he was persuading them and making them understand you don't have to go into the law of circumcision or the law of sacrifice. You don't have to do that. You be sacrificed and keep the laws of God with the faith of Christ, not on the law of sacrifice. Read it again, though. Stand therefore.
Stand fast, therefore, in the liberty wherewith Christ hath made us free. And be not entangled again with the yoke of bondage.
Don't be entangled with the yoke of bondage. What is that talking about? Acts chapter 15 in verse 10. What is the yoke of bondage that he's speaking about? Let's get the understanding on that.
The book of Acts, chapter 15 and verse 10. Now therefore, why tempt ye God to put a yoke a yoke upon the neck of the disciples, which neither our fathers nor were able to bear.
Which our fathers nor were able to bear. What is that yoke it's speaking about? The law of sacrifice. Remember, all those sacrificing that we did, it could not make the comers thereunto what? Perfect. But now in Christ we were able to reach perfection. That's what Paul was trying to teach the people. But remember, you had false brethren coming into the church and saying what? You can't be saved unless you're circumcised and follow after what? The law of Moses. That's what I was going into. Acts 5 and 1. Galatians 5 and 1 again. And we're going to read 2. Pick up at verse 2. I'm sorry.
The book of Galatians, chapter 5 and verse 2. Behold, I, Paul, say unto you,
read,
that if ye be circumcised, Christ shall profit you nothing.
So if you're circumcised, Christ ain't going to profit you nothing? What does he mean by that? If you're circumcised and do what? Go back into the law of sacrifice. Read.
For I testify again to every man that is circumcised, that he is a debtor to do the whole law.
Meaning now you are under that law of bondage. Now you kill, you steal, you get death. Now, if you do this, you do that, you got to bring a turtle dove. You got to bring all these different offerings and sacrifices. When we read in Hebrews 10, they can't make you perfect. Read.
Christ is become of no effect unto you. Whosoever of you are justified by the law.
If you're justified by the law of sacrifice, read.
Ye are fallen from grace.
Now you can't come unto Christ. You have fell from grace. Read.
For we, through the Spirit, wait for the hope of righteousness by faith.
Read.
For in Jesus Christ, neither circumcision availeth anything.
For in Jesus Christ, neither circumcision availeth anything. Read.
Nor uncircumcision, but faith which worketh by love.
But faith which worketh by love. Meaning what? If you believe on Christ, that's all you had to do. And ultimately keeping of the commandments. Let's get Acts 21 and 20 just to make sure nobody's confused. We ain't pushing no Christianity doctrine here. You still had to keep the commandments. And we're going to read it again in 1 Corinthians. Read that.
The book of Acts, chapter 21 and verse 20. And when they heard it, they glorified the Lord and said unto him, Thou seest, brother, how many thousands of Jews there are which believe, and they are all zealous of the law.
And they are what?
All zealous of the law.
And they are zealous of the laws. You see that? So when you believe, you're going to keep the commandments. But what? In the faith of Christ, not on the blood of bulls and of goats. Now, let's go back to 1 Corinthians chapter 7 and verse 17, and let's read it with the understanding now. 1 Corinthians chapter 7 and verse 17.
The book of 1 Corinthians chapter 7 and verse 17. But as God have distributed it distributed to every man as the Lord have called everyone. So let him walk.
So, however you came into the knowledge of Christ, you continue walking that walk. Whether you came in as a Gentile, meaning you follow what? In heathenish manners, or if you came in under the law of sacrifice. If you were a Hebrew of the Hebrews like Paul. Read.
And so ordain I in all churches.
Read.
Is any man called being circumcised?
Did you come into the knowledge of Christ being circumcised, meaning keeping the law of sacrifice? Read.
Let him not become uncircumcised.
Meaning continue to sacrifice. It's no problem. But understand, there's going to come a day when you're going to have to rely on Jesus Christ. Because what was going on? The temple had not fallen yet. There were still people sacrificing, but like we just read in Acts 21 and 20, they believed on Christ and they were zealous of the laws. Read.
Is any called in uncircumcision?
Were you called in uncircumcision? Meaning you were sacrificing unrighteously to, you were, blood strangled? Like we read in Acts 15. Let's get that real quick. Acts chapter 15, Acts 15 and 20. Read that real quick.
The book of Acts chapter 15 and verse 20.
This is coming in under uncircumcision. Read.
But that we write unto them that they abstain from pollutions of idols.
You abstain from the idolatry that you in the midst of. Read.
And from fornication.
And from fornication. Read.
And from things strangled and from blood.
You see that? Because you did a lot of different stuff that had nothing to do with the Bible at all. You an idolater. All right. Now go back to 1 Corinthians 7 and read verse 18 again.
The book of 1 Corinthians chapter 7 and verse 18. Is any man called being circumcised?
Read.
Let him not become uncircumcised.
Don't just give up sacrificing right away, because you don't believe just yet all the way. Read.
Is any called in uncircumcision? Let him not be circumcised.
Read.
Circumcision is nothing.
If you came in under the law of sacrifice, that don't matter no more. Read.
And uncircumcision is nothing.
If you came in as an idolater, that don't mean nothing. Read.
But the keeping of the commandments of God.
But what?
The keeping of the commandments of God.
So it did not matter which way you came into the knowledge of Christ. The only thing that mattered now is, are you going to keep the commandments and the faith of Christ? Let's back it up. Romans 3 and 31 and Revelation 14 and 12. So I pray y'all understanding that yes, you still have to get circumcision, but you need to keep the commandments of God, which is what? Circumcised on the 8th day according to Leviticus 12 in verse 3. That's what we learned today. Read that. 31.
The book of Romans chapter 3 and verse 31. Do we then make void the law through faith?
Do we what?
Then make void the law through faith.
So do we throw away the law of circumcision? Do we throw away the law of the Sabbath? Do we throw away the law of keeping the feast of Pentecost through faith, meaning because Christ came? Read.
God forbid.
What?
God forbid.
Read.
Yea, we establish the law.
Yea, we establish the law. That is what we are doing today throughout the four corners of the earth. Revelation 14 and verse 12. So don't get anything confused. Yes, you still have to get circumcised. Yes, you still have to keep the laws of God. Read.
The book of Revelation chapter 14 and verse 12. Here is the patience of the saints.
Read.
Here are they that keep the commandments of God.
That what?
Keep the commandments of God.
Read.
And the faith of Jesus.
You see that? At the end of the day, you're going to be judged on whether you keep the commandments of God and whether you believe on Christ, which was one and the same thing. With that, we say shalom.
We used to scream black power while heroin was pushed. But at the end of the day, nothing's in vain. IUIC has been given a vision. The tents of Judah has risen. Many has attempted the mission, minor murmuring, omitting, and missing the mark. Just reading that he had the flame of fire in his eyes gave us the spark. We on Paul's mission. We out on the road, purple and gold, from Mexico, Cuba, Haiti, Ghana, Sierra Leone. 144,000 boots banging, concrete crackling. These are our men repented at heart. The scriptures is proof. IUIC, we deliver the truth.